We renounce our Symbolist masters, the last of all lovers of the Moonlight, by F.T. Marinetti. We have sacrificed everything for the success of this futurist concept of life, to such a degree that today, after having loved them intensely, we hate the glorious forefathers of our intellects, the great symbolist geniuses, Edgar Poe, Baudelaire, Mallarme, and Verlaine. Today we feel nothing but contempt for them, for having swum in the river of time continually, looking back over their shoulders toward the distant blue wellspring of the past, toward the ciel antérieur au fleuret la beauté. For those geniuses, there was no poetry without nostalgia, without evocation of times that were dead and gone, without the mists of history and legend. We detest them, the symbolist masters, we who have dared to step naked from the river of time and who create, despite our better judgment, and with our bodies grazed and scraped on the rocks of our steep ascent, new springs of heroism that sing, new torrents that deck the mountains in scarlet. We are red, and we love red, eyes and cheeks reddened by the glare of the locomotive's firebox, and we love and sing the ever-growing triumph of the machine which they stupidly denounce. Our symbolist fathers had a passion that we think was ridiculous, the passion for things eternal, the desire for the immortal, imperishable masterpiece. We, however, consider that there is nothing more base or abject than having one's eyes fixed on the immortal, when creating a work of art more abject and base than the calculated, usurious concept of the Christian paradise, which should repay us for the virtues we exercised on earth 1,000,000%. One should simply create, precisely because creating has no use or value, is without recompense, is ignored, despised, is, in a word, heroic. To the poetry of nostalgic memory, we oppose that the feverish expectation against tears of beauty shed over the tomb. We set the finely chiseled features of the pilot, the chauffeur, and the aviator, instead of the concept of the immortal, the imperishable. In art, we propose that of continuous becoming, the evanescent, the transitory, and the ephemeral. Thus we shall transform the nevermore of Edgar Poe into intense joy, that we shall teach how to love the beauty of an emotion or a sensation inasmuch as it is unique and destined to disappear irrevocably. History in our eyes can be nothing but a falsifier, or at best a miserable little stamp collector, or a collector of medals and of counterfeit coins. The past is necessarily inferior to the future, and that's how we want it to be. How could we possibly see any virtue at all in our most dangerous enemy, the past, that gloomy mentor and abominable tutor? This is why we renounce the obsessive splendors of the centuries that are gone forever, and why we cooperate with triumphant machines which keep the earth enclosed in their net of speed. We connive with the machine to destroy the poetry of far-off times, of faraway places, and of solitude in the wild, the poignant nostalgia of parting, and in their place we set the tragic lyricism of speed in all places and at all times. Indeed, our futurist sensibility is no longer moved by the dark mystery of an unexplored valley or of a mountain gorge which against our wills we imagine. Instead, they are traversed by an elegant ribbon of white road, where all of a sudden, coughing and spluttering, an automobile comes to a halt, gleaming with progress and full of civilized voices, like the corner of a boulevard set down in the middle of nowhere. Every pine wood madly in love with the moonlight has a futurist road crossing it from one side to the other. The day of simple, tearful moaning in lengthy soliloquies is over. With us, the day of the rootless man begins, of extended man who fuses with iron, who feeds upon electricity and understands nothing, beyond the desire for danger and day-to-day heroism. That's enough to give you an idea of how much we despise those who defend the aesthetics of nature. Stupid anachronism that it is. Multicolored billboards in the green meadows, iron bridges which chain the hills together, surgical trains that cut through the blue belly of the mountains, huge turbines, new muscles of the earth. May you be praised by the futurist poets, since it is you who are destroying the old morbid sensibilities and the billing and cooing of the earth. With these sorts of passions and innovatory impulses, how do you expect us to accept the concept of art, which is current in contemporary Italy? For far too long, Italy has been subjected to the enervating influence of Gabriele D'Annunzio, the little brother of the great French symbolists, who, like them, is full of nostalgia and fawning over the naked body of a woman. We must fight against Gabriele D'Annunzio at all costs, because it is he, with his great talent, who has distilled the four intellectual poisons that we want to destroy once and for all. First, the sickly nostalgic poetry of memory and of faraway places. Second, a romantic sentimentalism dripping with moonlight, which is elevated into the fatalistic ideal of woman beauty. Third, an obsession with the erotic, with the adulterous triangle, the spice of incest, and the titillation of what Christians call sinfulness. Fourth, an academic passion for the past, a mania for antiquity and for collecting things. In the same way, we turn our backs on the tremulous pastoral sentimentalism of Pascoli, who, in spite of his undoubted genius, will nevertheless stand condemned because of the influence his cowardly humility has had. And finally, we are very happy to have to partake no longer of the disgusting milky coffee of the sacristan, dished up by our despicable Fagazzaro. We accept none but the enlightened work of four or five great precursors of futurism. I am alluding to Emile Zola, Walt Whitman, Rosny Ein, the author of Bilateral and the Red Wave, Paul Adam, the author of Trust, Gustav Kahn, the creator of free verse, and Verhaeren, the glorifier of machines and of tentacular cities. Futurist lyricism, which is essentially fluid, ever changing, just like the pictorial dynamism of the futurist painters, Boccioni, Cara, Russolo, Balla, and Severini, expresses our eye with increasing speed, that eye which is created through endless inspiration, futurist lyricism, a perpetual dynamism of thought, an uninterrupted flow of images and sounds, can alone express the ephemeral, unstable, symphonic universe which takes shape in us and with us. It is the total realization of the dynamic nature of our flexible minds, the complete eye, sung, painted, and sculptured, yet never fixed in its perpetual becoming, a succession of lyrical states which precludes all the Parnesian ideas about reciprocal outwardness and extension. This is the great strophe that has been orchestrated by futurist free verse. Against abstract art, which is static and formalistic, we set an art of continuous movement, of aggressive struggle, and of speed. To the imperious assertions of a dogmatic intellectualism, we reply by shouting, we want to destroy museums and libraries. Do you have any objections? Enough of that. We are all well aware what our lovely lying intelligence tells us. We don't want to hear it. All glory to the poetic spirit, the faculty which Edgar Poe calls the most exalted of all, since those truths which to us were of the most enduring importance could only be reached by that analogy which speaks in proof tones to the imagination alone, and to the unaided reasons bears no weight. Edgar Poe, the colloquy of Manos and Una. Against a skeptical, pessimistic determinism, we therefore set the cult of creative intuition, freedom of inspiration, and a self-induced opticism. Against a nostalgic, sentimental, or erotic moonlight, we finally exalt an unjust and cruel heroism, such as will tame the all-conquering zeal of the motor. This manifesto was first published in French in Le Futurisme 1911, and with a few variations in Guerra Sola Igiene del Mondo 1915. It also appeared in L'Italia Futurista on August 5th, 1917. So that concludes my reading of We Renounce Our Symbolist Masters by F.T. Marinetti. The panel tonight is the other Carl, Alcaz, CSD, and Many Dog for the first time. So how's it going, guys? What are your thoughts on that text?
Well, the one that I read in the book that chronicles the futurist authors was completely worded differently. I think the text you were reading was worded much better, in my opinion.
Yeah. The futurist anthology has different translations. Like a lot of the titles are different. I've been finding Marinetti's critical writings to be like better translated. I don't know. I don't speak Italian fluently enough to really comment on which one's more accurate or truer to the Italian, but as an English speaker, I would say that the critical writings are definitely worded better. So I'd say it's a better translation. But
definitely,
like all of Marinetti's writings, it's very poetic and it emphasizes a lot on speed and technology.
Speed and technology and like man's domination over nature.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I personally like the line where he says, "History is basically nothing but stamps to the past, and the future is inherently superior to the past."
Yeah, I did too. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I love how he condemned the Annunzio for being too romantic and too nostalgic.
Yeah, there is a lot of misconceptions about D'Annunzio. I see a lot of people like labeling him as a futurist, and as much as I love D'Annunzio, he's like a personal hero of mine. I would not label him as a futurist at all.
No.
His work, like I did a reading of his letter to the Dalmatians, and in that he like there are lots of nods to like pagan Rome and the Renaissance and Dante, and he's looking to Italy's past as a source for its greatness, more so than like looking to the future like Marinetti does. So like there are a lot of differences in like their writing styles and their ideology. They were both like ardent Italian nationalists, so that's where the similarities come in, and important precursors to fascism, but yeah, there are important differences between the two.
I would say D'Annunzio is more just a progressive national syndicalist more than anything.
Yeah, because he was socially progressive, but he still looked towards the past, while Marinetti was always looking ahead.
Yeah.
And that's what I disagree with Marinetti on, is because I do think there's useful things that one can look to towards the past, not be like thinking that we can go back to the past, but I think there's certain aspects of the past that still work and are necessary for society.
Can you give some examples of what you think like should be held on to versus what?
Oh, I think like stuff like the family unit. I think identity, like whether it be a cultural, ethnic, or religious thing, has always been important, and it's what drives people forward.
I think he does have a sense of identity, though, of like Italian identity. In his article against Passeus Venice, he talks about Italy historically meaning builders of the Italian historically meaning like builders of the future. So like in his view, Italians always were futurists in a way, from pagan Rome to present. They're innovators, and like that's what they need to get back to. So
that's
I don't know.
a good point.
You know, I have a reading on that. I'd recommend it. It's our like lowest viewed reading, so I'm kind of trying to show it and get people listening to it a little more because it's a great read. But yeah, he does like address that in there. Yeah, I do think he does have a sense of Italian identity, though. It's just it's of Italians as innovators and creators of new things. And I mean, you go to Italy and you're surrounded by ruins of ancient Rome and like museums and art galleries and stuff like that. It's like we shouldn't always be looking to the past for our source of greatness. We should be aspiring to create great things in the present and building towards like a better future for our people. That's his point of view on it.
Yeah, I agree with that to an extent, but I feel like Marinetti at times tends to neglect the past, or tends to just completely ignore and saying, "Oh, let's just keep moving forward," instead of looking
Yeah,
at things that we can take inspiration from.
I
Not to
think
say like
that's
we should make copies of it. I'm not saying that at
yeah.
all, but there are certain aspects of the past that are very useful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, looking at it, you know, when thinking about ancient Rome itself never thought of itself as being ancient or a part of the past, because ancient Rome in itself was moving forward and moving ahead.
Exactly. They were innovators of their time. I think that's how you build great things, by like being forward thinking and audacious.
They were very innovative in their warfare and even their production. They had early manufactories in the later stages of Rome, but I mean, due to the Christianization of Rome, a lot of the philosophers and professionals were basically cast out as pagan and were either killed or expelled. Like they went to places like Persia.
Yeah.
Yeah. So would you say like traditionalism kind of like leads to less inferior societies in a way? Or like would you consider like the Middle Ages like traditionalist or essentially?
It's hard to say. I'm not sure I would call them traditionalists in their time and day. I mean,
Yeah, like Socrates was not a traditionalist in his time, or like any of these
Yeah.
Greek Hellenic philosophers. They were innovators. They were like pushing. They were pushing the diet. You know, they were pushing the ideas of the time forward. They weren't like preserving tradition or whatever.
and they were enemies of like the conservatives of their time and day, like people who wanted to preserve the status quo. You know, everybody knows like Socrates was executed because for corrupting the youth with dangerous ideas and stuff. Like, you know, that's very Marinetti in his time and day.
Didn't like Socrates willingly choose to kill himself though?
He wasn't gonna play ball with the people in authority at the time. Like, he wasn't gonna stop doing what he had been doing, so he accepted death as a consequence for being a free thinker, if I recall correctly.
You tell me Socrates was a futurist dog? He didn't,
Yeah, kind of in his time and day.
dude.
They were all kind of futurists because they were putting new ideas forward. Like they were making up their own ideas and teaching them to people. Like they weren't just recycling old ideas from other people.
Yeah, which, you know, I think is what we need to be doing now too. We shouldn't be trying to recreate like fascist Italy or insert historical period that, you know, you prefer. Take inspiration from it, but, you know, we should be thinking forward, being open to new ideas. Yeah, be audacious, and forward
Or
thinking.
preserving a constitution written like 200 years ago.
Yeah, it's just a non-starter anyways. Like if you're in our camp and you're like a fascist or third positionist, you shouldn't care for the Constitution anyways. It's not our ideals at all. I'm not American, so I don't know. I'm kind of probably talking out of pocket a little bit there.
The
But
Constitution is inherently contradictory to third position ideas because it puts rights above the state and the individual above the state.
Yeah, and that's why
heretical. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, that's why I was saying, like in a private conversation with you, Giovanni, if America ever became third positionist, it wouldn't be America anymore, because the foundation of America completely goes against fascist ideas.
Yeah, it would have to become like a completely new kind of country, like America in name only, maybe, but I could do away without that too, give it a new name, new identity, new state, new everything.
Yeah, because people try to say like America was the first fascist country, which is stupid because everything about America is completely anti.
Sorry, you cut out there, Carl, at the end. Are you still there?
I think he's just gonna say antithetical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can say antithetical. Sorry, for some reason it keeps disconnecting on my end, and I don't know why. It's really irritating.
That's cool. Do you want to finish your thought, or were you just going to say?
I was just going to say that people try to say America was the first fascist country, but I think that's dishonest because everything about America is antithetical to fascism.
Yeah, it was built upon like liberal Masonic principles that I would say are not compatible with.
It was based on individualism and capitalism.
Yeah.
Only
like John,
from what
John
I can tell,
Stuart
the only
Mills.
people who say that are radicals and Wignats. Other than that, that's about it.
Yeah, one struggle, bro.
But back on Carl's like thing where he said America would be a completely different country. You know how a lot of the cringy NS people and Wignats say Weimar problems equals Weimar solutions?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's entirely wrong. If a third position revolution was to happen, it would be Bolshevist in its nature because it had to tear down everything that America stands for at the moment.
Yeah, we'd have to be completely revolutionary. Our views cannot be reconciled with the current power structure. We can't just slip in there and transform the entire system into what we want it to be. Like, we're outside the system, and that's how we should stay. We should replace the system with something that isn't garbage, in my view. Not try and cater our views to, the everyman's sensibility, or lower ourselves to their level, like bring the everyman up to where we're at and thinking along our lines. Be revolutionary. Like, I don't know. I have no interest in preserving anything around me, to be honest. So I think like North America, I'm Canadian, you guys are all American, but it's like we need futurism more than ever. Like, I don't know. We can take a lot of inspiration from Marinetti. I think he is very relevant to the struggle. I don't have a lot of time for like traditionalists in the movement or people who like my founding fathers was the first white nationalists. Like,
I mean,
did Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson want to have race mixing between the Native Americans and the Anglos?
Yeah, they want to make a new race in the United States.
So much for that talking.
No, right?
They also like how they defined whites. It was Anglos and Jews. Nobody else. Even the Germans weren't white by their definition. So they weren't. They weren't exactly white nationalists the way people define these things in the here and now. Not that I care for those people, anyways. I don't consider myself a white nationalist, but just shooting at some of their bad talking points.
Well, yeah, it's like even in Canada, it would probably benefit Canada to just get away from all the conservative bullshit, because a lot of those guys, like especially, I think it's in the Alberta region, you said, like where the oil is, where they're just like having I don't know, Canada's just fucked when it comes to a lot of things.
Yeah, in Canada, like the more trad types want to return to being part of like the British Empire and all that. I personally don't think Britain has the capacity to maintain an empire anymore. That's why they don't have an empire anymore. They're part of the American empire now. So yeah, it's just like a non-starter. It's not going anywhere.
It's very like Cuckman.
Yeah. And it's not going to happen. It's not realistic. Like there's the whole Kanzuk thing. And the people who are a little more pragmatic and realist kind of like acknowledge that Canada as an independent nation has kind of failed up to this point. It hasn't really amounted to much. So their solution is let us be swallowed by the Americans or like by the Chinese or like by some other power that, if I was doing Canadian nationalism, I would want to build a new Canada, and like do Canadian futurism. You know, I couldn't see like Mussolini sitting there like, hey, Giovanni Gentile, this post-Risorgimento Italy isn't really working out the way we had hoped it would. We should probably just like sell the country to Austria or something. Like that would not be very fascist. Like,
I mean, it's gay. It's racial cuckolding. Like, you should fucking kill yourself if you have that opinion. It's disgusting. It's betrayal of your people.
yeah,
Country out for profit, and that's what liberals do.
Like, if you genuinely think that your country should be sold to another country, or should be like conquered by another country, or have your country, you know, be islamicized or something, just because you think it's anti-liberal, like you're a faggot. You're basically just allowed, you know, like you can work within liberalism. Liberalism is not going to last forever. Like, it's really gay.
Find ways to work around that system and like organize with people who are like-minded, and you know, try and build institutions that can eventually replace the current ones. There are things you can do that are productive, you know, without just being a cucked faggot who wants to sell your country out to China or to America. But that's what I'm dealing with in Canada, which is why I kind of just do online shit and not in real life activism, because there's nothing worth my time happening in Canada currently. So
yeah,
I have tried to start groups before. It hasn't worked out. So
there's absolutely nothing there. Because like when I used to talk to the main host of Ewoks Unhinged, who's also a Canadian, he told me even Antifa over there is pretty weak and useless.
Yeah, no, they are. Even the left. Like,
from what I noticed, it seems like extremist or radical views in general over there are very weak, even when these ideologies were at their prime.
Yeah, outside of Quebec, I will give props to Adelon, Quebec. They are a good group. They don't consider themselves Canadian, though. They consider themselves like French America, not like USA, but like North America. Like they're Quebec separatists.
Yeah, isn't there like
also?
Yeah, isn't like the most like popular leftist? You can
a little
go.
fun fact about the Canadian Union of Fascists: it was run by a 17-year-old and only had around 100 members.
Yeah, they founded like the natives' rights movement.
Isn't like the most popular leftist right now just Jason Unruh?
Yeah, Jason Unruh, who's a clown with a mohawk and a spiked bat or whatever. That guy is ridiculous. I've never even watched the show. It's just I've heard clips of him. That guy doesn't interest me at all. I'm not a leftist.
Fight him.
Let's not get into
He's
that.
a third worldist, so he doesn't even believe revolution will happen in the first world. So he's just like, fuck it, let's just help the third world instead.
So he's a third worldist. Like, can someone red pill me on what he advocates for? Like, I've heard he's like a tanky or something, like a Stalinist, kind of like an authoritarian left nat.
Yeah, third worldists just basically believe that the first world has no revolutionary potential, that they're like too like well-fed, too wealthy, and only like poor third world countries can have a revolution. Like he says he basically wants like all the third world countries to like revolt and unite and basically go to war against the first world. So it's like he's not really a nationalist anyway.
Yeah.
He wants to de-Europeanize America and Latin America.
I'm hearing a lot of echoes with people in the so-called nationalist movement, to be honest. A lot of people are looking to the third world or other powers as like their liberators or whatever, which I think is stupid.
Gay.
But yeah, I do kind of agree with the point though that people in our own countries are probably too well fed, too comfortable to really, you know, step outside of line and, you know, do some damage to the system. They don't really have any revolutionary potential. I agree with that much.
Yeah, I can see it too.
Weak, fat, and soft. But yeah, I agree
fucking Ezra Pound said a slave is one who waits for someone else to come and free them. I think it's relevant to this.
Yeah, that is a relevant quote to these pro-China cucks. looking to
Yeah,
China.
fuck China. China's a shithole dystopian country. They literally live like fucking bugs. With Xi Jinping, like the fucking queen ants or whatever. It's disgusting. They have like a shit quality of life. I would never want to live in China. No culture either. It's all like consumerist.
Well, it's funny because like Connor Gillis came on one of my streams, and then Connor got into an argument with Culture Thug about China, and because Connor lived in China, and started screaming about it, like, no, China doesn't have sweatshops. Their culture's different than your culture. You won't understand it. I lived there.
China
and it got to the after the point of yelling so much, I got so frustrated that I actually had to yell at Connor, and I'm like, hey, you need to knock this shit off. Knock this fucking shit off and calm your ass down. You're on my fucking show. Don't do this bullshit.
Yeah. I didn't see that, but
at least fucking, at least in British imperialism, they didn't need to have fucking suicide nets outside the sweatshops. Like, come on now. China has shit labor conditions. I would not want to be a worker in China.
Yeah, it's an overpopulated, massively polluted country.
It's horrible.
I've never been, but I heard it's just dirty. Like, people don't respect their communities.
I knew someone who went to like the World Games there for like the Special Olympics, and she told me the water over there was disgusting.
Yeah, it's like not drinkable.
Yeah, it's a disgusting place. The fucking communists, like, fuck that shit. No, I'm not saying we should go fucking counter signal China, but the people who are like, oh my god, base China, we should all become, Xi Jinping thought or whatever, or faggots and, traitors to their country.
To be clear, we're not talking from like a pro-America, fuck China position. We don't see them as liberators for our people. We are revolutionaries. People who like are looking to China as their liberators are not. They create a massive roadblock.
Those people are stupid.
It's almost as bad as third worldism in a way, I'd argue. Like, I'd only argue that China is slightly better than America, only in certain aspects.
In what aspects?
Like they're more technocratic?
Okay,
that they're statescraft, and they're less likely to force your kids to become drag queens or start pushing that fucking culture.
They would if it was financially beneficial to them.
Yeah.
They literally post like pro BLM shit, saying like, oh, you talk about the Uyghurs, but you're fucking killing black people and shit. Like, they just care about real politics. They don't have any morals and principles.
Yeah, that's how most geopolitics are, though. They'll fund it's even the same with America. They'll fund whoever it takes to destabilize their enemies.
But someone who lived in China told me that, like, in their children's school books, they actually show, kids that, gays and trans people exist, in their school books. So it's not like, they're.
They do. At least. Yeah. I'm sure they do, at least for gays. Like, there's a very big gay culture in China. It's just like
they're not a conservative country by any means.
It's just not it's like a don't ask, don't tell thing. Like, if you're in the government,
they're just less tough than us. But yeah, you're right. It's the don't ask, don't tell type thing. But they're not as cucked as us. But to act as if they're conservative compared to us would be kind of misleading at the same time,
Yeah, North Korea is the only like Asian country I can think of who's actually like super hardcore anti-faggotry,
I thought Laos was as well.
Probably not to the extent that North Korea is. I'm not necessarily pro like the extent that North Korea is anti-gay.
Countries like Laos, the Philippines, Cambodia, stuff like that. Like, they're not like strong countries. They're under China's boot. Like, culturally, they might be anti-LGBT, but on a structural level, like, they're under China's boot. So
Forever does not necessarily endorse anti-LGBT. Just saying that.
Yeah, we're not like a conservative group. We have a lot of gay friends. Sorry to use that line, but
we have a lot of gay futures on our chat.
Yeah, like, I don't know. We're We're not super reactionary
Futurism is
on
not
that
like
issue.
we're not pro homo or pro hetero. It's you know it's like how Marinetti was or we endorse asexuality, asexual warriors.
Yeah, but
Warriors.
the difference with gays and futurism is they're not like the weird guys that do kink at the pride parades. They were more like the shirtless men with a bunch of muscles and stuff like that.
Yeah, we have some of the most homophobic gays and that might be called LGBT in our chat. So they don't like gay culture.
Yeah,
that's the
I
distinction.
move on from the gay question.
Yeah,
I think most of them would see modern gay culture as bourgeois if we actually asked.
We're against modern gay culture. Modern gay culture is so intertwined with bourgeoisie culture that we're definitely against it.
Yeah.
But like China's bourgeois too. I knew fucking Chinese kids IRL who are like, you know, rich sons and daughters of fucking Chinese billionaires that were sent over here to get an education, and they were the most bougie motherfuckers ever. They had really fast cars.
Hey guys,
ordered food to their house.
Remember, there can be billionaires under socialism.
Yeah, according to Caleb Boffin.
Yeah, why not? Of course, there can be billionaires under socialism. Why not?
Well,
I
think that's
retarded. I think that in my version of socialism, what I think it would be you couldn't like accumulate enough wealth to get that. You know, like there should be unneeded wealth. You shouldn't be able to spend like millions of dollars on fucking 30 Rolls Royces or something. I think that's retarded.
It is
just like consumerist luxury items and bullshit.
I think you should have some. You should have some level of consumerism, but like I was saying, I knew fucking Chinese kids who had like 30 Rolls Royces or 30 fucking. You know, they would collect cars. They spend millions of dollars on this, funded by their rich billionaire Chinese parents. Like it's the height of bourgeoisie culture, and these guys are supposedly from a based, you know, anti-Western socialist country.
Yeah, but were their parents a part of the Chinese Communist
Party?
Party?
They were. Yeah, they were fucking built like they were multi-millionaires at the very least. Their parents were, and they were sending their kids here for an education.
Yeah, usually people in the communist parties are usually the rich motherfuckers when you look at the history of communism.
Yeah, like these guys are billionaires and their kids were the most consumerist fuckers ever, and I bet their parents were too. They just didn't live here.
Yeah, my high school was majority Chinese, and I know what you're talking about. You know, they all wear like flashy clothes. They all get like their parents buy them a car. Yeah, their parents buy them brand new cars when they turn 16. You know,
I think they're definitely more bougie than you were thinking.
Yeah, like they're definitely not like workers or like
not like they weren't even American citizens. They were just coming here for school.
Yeah, I know that type.
They treated they were basically rappers. Like that's how they dressed. Like fucking gold chains, flashy clothes. Like it's a height of consumerism. Like even most white Americans aren't that consumerist.
Yeah. I think people who take like the whole pro-China stance have not spent time around Chinese people really, except through watching like anime or something.
I don't think I've ever really seen an anime with Chinese people in it. The Japanese don't like the Chinese very much.
Have you ever seen the Karl Marx anime commissioned by the Chinese Communist Party?
Yes, I have.
I haven't.
I haven't yet.
Anime.
Oh no, China. I hate China, honestly.
Yeah, I co-sign that statement. Fuck China.
I like how this turned to the anti-Chinese episode.
Yeah, we can talk about other things too. I'd say we have like 20 minutes before we hit 1 hour. So, anything else about the text that you guys liked or didn't like, or
I'll say this. I think that I like Marinetti's like prose, and I like how he talks. And I think his ideas are interesting, but I disagree obviously because I like Poe and I like Baudelaire. They're probably my two favorite poets. So
yeah, I like D'Annunzio a lot. So
Yeah, I like D'Annunzio too. I like Baudelaire quite a bit.
What about he name drops some of his like main influences that like he would hold on to. I'll reread the passage. We accept none but the enlightened work of 4 or 5 great precursors of futurism. I am alluding to Emile Zola, Walt Whitman, Rosny Eine, the author of Bilateral and the Red Wave, Paul Adam, the author of Trust, Gustav Kahn, the creator of free verse, and Verhaeren, the glorifier of machines and of tentacular cities. Are any of you guys like familiar with any of those people? Do you see the overlap into futurism, or?
I can't.
I know who Walt Whitman was. It's interesting because Walt Whitman was very humanist,
Naturalist too, was he? Was he?
Yeah,
not?
he was very into natural lifestyle. He was also like gay. I guess it's not not super relevant, but yeah, he wasn't like very futurist. I don't think he was, at least. He was, he was anti-war, I believe. Very humanism, very realism.
I would have to reread him. I think I read one of his poems like years ago, but it didn't strike me as futurist. I was kind of like surprised to see his name mentioned there.
Maybe I think Marinetti just likes his poetry. He's not even like people are like that. Like they
maybe like stylistically from an artistic stylistic.
Not his content necessarily.
Yeah. I would have to reread him too. It's been years, but I don't know. Zola and Gustav Kahn were both mentioned in Marinetti's self-portrait as early influences of his. But
yeah,
I'm not really
Whitman was like super anti-slavery. He was super pro-democracy. He was super pro-humanitarianism. You know, very pro.
Marinetti is a lover of freedom, though. So
I know. Maybe that's why, because he was very pro. Walt Whitman's seen as like a very ethical. He was a big fan of ethics. So like, Walt Whitman would have hated Marinetti's writings because he would have seen like the war and the violence and despised it. Like I don't think we would have been a fan of it.
Yeah, but Marinetti was a fan of him. He only named 4 or 5 people that like he would call precursors of futurism, and Walt Whitman is one of them. So I would have to reread Walt Whitman to really like comment on that. He doesn't elaborate on it in this text anyway, so I don't know. I thought that was interesting though. Any of the other guys that
something I found interesting is, and it's not just with this test, but how like you see how a lot of these people who ended up influencing or formed fascism disliked each other or had a love-hate relationship with each other.
That's how it is today. Even though the current fascists today mostly dislike each other.
Yeah, the petty sniping is nonstop. I don't want to mention names or bring like e-drama into the podcast, but I don't know. We get it from both sides. The more traditionalist side, the more like radical racialist side. Nobody likes us really.
That's how it was back then, though. Like most of the fascists disliked each other. Like even D'Annunzio and Mussolini didn't get along.
Yeah, even at one point it was alleged that Mussolini didn't try to have D'Annunzio assassinated.
Yeah.
Albeit that disputed. Like
he ended up just paying him off to stay out of politics, which D'Annunzio accepted. I love this quote though from Mussolini. I'm paraphrasing, but if you have a rotten tooth, the solution is either to pull it out or to fill it with gold. In the case of D'Annunzio, I've chosen the latter. So like he paid him off to stay out of politics. I love that quote though.
Stalin always chose the latter, I guess. The no man, no problem.
Yeah. The death of one man is a tragedy. The death of a million is a statistic.
Trust me, he had
very cold and calculating, and Yeah, that's why I don't think Stalin actually believed in anything. I think Stalin believed in Stalin. That's all he believed in. Like I don't think he was not an idealist.
No, I don't like. I'm not an admirer of Stalin. He might have been an effective leader in some ways, but
he wasn't though. Like when Hitler invaded Russia, Stalin literally spent like 2 weeks fucking hiding and having a mental a panic attack, but he didn't leave his house for 2 weeks, and his fucking the Politburo, like the high command of the Communist Party, literally had to go to his house, and Stalin thought they were coming to assassinate him. And that's attested to by his entire Politburo. That's not Western propaganda.
So you're saying he was a coward?
He was, and he also ignored the he ignored tons of reports that Germans massing in the Russian border. One of the reasons why Barbarossa was so initially successful was because Stalin never moved any of the troops from Siberia or from other parts of Russia onto the German border. He divided his troops so much, which allowed Germans to do a massive an early attack in Operation Barbarossa. The fucking plane, a German plane crash that was carrying communications that basically revealed the Barbarossa plans. And Stalin dismissed it as British propaganda that were trying to entice Stalin to attack Hitler early.
Yeah, Stalin's government.
Stalin was only effective because he was able to kill anybody who could oppose him.
Yeah, and see, Stalin's government was rife with so many damn problems, and I feel like it's a dead horse I've beaten so many times on my channel, on my own channel. But it's also frustrating because there's no nuance when people talk about that guy. It's either he was the worst man alive or he was the best man alive. There's no fucking gray areas with people when they talk about Stalin.
Yeah, I agree with you. I know it's yeah. Stalin was very effective in some areas, but in other areas he was a fucking dumbass. Like a lot of leaders, honestly.
Even Mao comparatively was a fucking retard when it came to policy. The Great Leap Forward was just the dumbest fucking policies ever.
Yeah, Mao was probably one of the greatest guerrilla leaders ever, but he was a terrible leading a country. Castro's way better if you want to look at communist leaders for actually putting policy in and leading an effective state.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If you have to kill everyone around you constantly out of paranoia or out of fear that they're gonna coup d'etat you, you're not a good leader, dude.
Stalin was purging people up until his death. Literally a few months before his death, he was purging doctors he thought were plotting against him.
But then consequently, Thomas Sankara wasn't purging people, and his right-hand man ended up having him killed.
Yeah, well, Sankara went too far the other direction. He didn't purge anybody. You have to purge some people. So people who are obviously your enemies, you have to purge.
Right.
I honestly
balance. You need to purge the right ones,
Yeah.
You can't just go around purging everybody who questions you on this or that,
Yeah, because that's what Emperor Hoja did. He purged everyone that was close to him, and then he got old and was lonely because all of his friends were dead because he had them all killed.
Hoja was a retard for a lot. The bunker thing has kind of been jerked off a lot, but spending 50% or whatever of your budget on fucking bunkers when your country is starving is really retarded.
It is.
And it's kind of a critique of authoritarianism.
The country went to liberalism.
I guess, but at least they went fucking. Yeah, I mean, Albania going to capitalism so quickly.
I was adding on to your point that he killed so many people that his whole party just abandoned the communist cause after his death.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't hear you. Yeah, Albania was fucked by capitalism too afterwards because capitalism was introduced so quickly. It allowed the mafia to come in and just steal everything.
Yeah, that's what sadly happened to most of Eastern Europe.
Yeah, Russia, that's what happened to them.
Yeah. So any final thoughts on the text or about anything else that we talked about tonight? Or we can probably start wrapping it up pretty soon.
I think it was a good discussion tonight. We definitely talked about a lot of topics that weren't that related to the text, but it wasn't bad.
That's okay. The text acts as a starting point for discussion, and that's where we went with it. Go ahead.
For anyone new in Futurism, would you say this is a good introductory text for them?
No, I would say read the Futurist Manifesto first. The futurism articles kind of expand on the main themes of futurism, but it was written 2 years after the manifesto first came out, and it's in like a bunch of parts. I think 6 parts. And I want to cover all of them. I think this is the 4th or 5th one we've covered so far. The next one we're going to be covering is the pleasure of being booed, but there's some other things that I want to cover before we do that one. So it might be a while before we get back to Marinetti on the podcast, but for like inquiring minds or people who are new to futurism, definitely start with the manifesto. You can find the Futurist Anthology, like Google it. The PDF is pretty easy to find. You don't have to dig too deep. And pick up Marinetti's critical writings. I'd say those are like the 2 texts that, if you want to like fully understand futurism as like an artistic, social, and political movement, those are the 2 texts I would recommend on Italian futurism. I mean, then you have Russian futurism, which is different. And you have offshoot movements like the British Vorticists that are directly inspired by futurism. And kind of like contemporary movements that there are some similarities but are different, like Dada or Surrealism. But futurism was the first one.
Really
This is a good
OG.
text, though. You know, great read. But I wouldn't recommend it as like the starting text or like as an introduction to futurism. We have a podcast on the 11 points of futurism. So if you want like an hour and a half podcast or so to listen to, I'd recommend that one. If you're just starting out with futurism.
Also, the Futurist Manifesto is very easy to find online. You just have to Google search it.
I own it like in 4 different books. Yeah, you can find that. It's like well circulated.
Plus, it's free, so you don't have to spend any money on it.
Yeah.
At least if you get a PDF of it.
You were saying something, Mini Dog?
Oh no, I was just saying that there's an audiobook on YouTube of someone reading it as well.
Yeah, I have one too. There's a few of them. I'm gonna show my own content. So listen to my version. Don't listen to those other guys' versions. See, Augustine has a reading of it. That's a really good channel. I will give a shout out to him. Subscribe to See Augustine. He does a lot of like Italian egoists too, and different things. He does the Futurist Manifesto. Guys like Marquis de Sade. I don't think he does any Bataille, but he does a lot of like horror fiction too, like Edgar Allan Poe, Lovecraft. He's got a cool channel. He does the Dada Manifesto also. He has a lot of good readings. See Augustine. Subscribe to him. He's a good channel. I like him a lot. And yeah, he does the Futurist Manifesto. If no one has anything else to say, we've been going for almost an hour now, so I'm ready to wrap up. Final thoughts?
Nothing else to say. Hell futurism, fuck China.
Zoom gain, speed gain,